On 25th September 1992, Kelsey Patterson, who was 38 at the time, was living with his half-brother David Simpson in his home in Palestine. At around 3 p.m. on the same day, he took his pistol and went outside. And this might be the last time that David saw him. After shooting 3 shots continuously into an aluminum pan in the front yard, he again reloaded his gun, and this time he started walking towards Oates Oil Company with the gun still in his hands. He was going to do something very horrific today. The owner, Louis Oates, who was a 63-year-old man, was standing at the loading dock when Patterson approached behind his back. He grabbed Louis by his collar and shot him directly on his head. But the horror was not over yet. As he was walking off the property, Mrs. Harris, a 41-year-old woman who at the time was working in her office, came outside. On finding her boss lying dead on the ground, she started screaming. Patterson again came back and approached her and grabbed her. She was screaming very loud. Patterson said to her, "You are going to get yours. You ain't going to get by with it." After speaking these words, he shot her. The people who saw this incident said that he never hesitated while doing all this. He was purely insane. He went to his home, removed all his clothes from his body and started walking down the street and again back to his home, shouting at those who was watching him. He kept on doing this until the police arrived and took him to jail. But this is not the first time that he has done such terrific thing. Earlier in the year 1980, then again in the year 1983, he tried to kill 2 people, but the reason he gave for these attempted murders will put you in a doubt that is it even possible? So this is the real life horrific case of Kelsey Patterson. Patterson was not like this from his childhood. Rather, he was quite a normal and average child. He was born in Palestine, Texas, where his maternal grandmother raised him because his mother passed away at an early age. After graduating from high school, he joined the military. He served in the military for around 2 years, then he was honorably discharged from there to take care of his sick grandmother. And everything was normal until one day his grandmother also passed away. Her death shattered him and it became a turning point in his life. In one of the investigations, his sister said that after this incident, his mental health started deteriorating. He became completely withdrawn and would talk and laugh to himself, which seems very weird and creepy at the same time. She also told that he would often tape his windows due to delusions and hallucinations. She told the authorities that his condition would improve if he received proper treatment and medications. But as soon as the treatment was stopped, his condition would deteriorate again. And every time he was sent to hospital, he was released without complete treatment, which was later proved their worst mistake, a glimpse of which we have seen in the beginning of this video. The series of his crimes began 2 years back from 1980 in the year 1978 when he was arrested for the first time for the assault of a police officer. Then in 1979 he was again charged with another assault. But the actual list of his horrific and serious crimes starts from 1980. Richard Lane was a co-worker of Patterson at the University of Texas Health Science Center in Dallas. He, along with other co-workers, was teasing Patterson by not putting his lunch in the refrigerator. But Patterson's mind made him believe that they were poisoning his food. Due to this event, later that same day, Patterson shot Richard. Although he did not die, but was severely injured and was hospitalized for months. Patterson was quickly arrested and taken into care. In the year 1981, when he was at the Rusk State Hospital, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Simply put, it is a severe psychological disorder where a person had delusions and hallucinations. A delusion is basically a false belief that the person strongly believes to be true. Now, probably you might have understood that why he believed that Richard was trying to poison his food. Actually, it was nothing more than a delusion. He continuously believed that other people were going to harm him and were against him, and this made him act without his own control. He was again released from the hospital and no legal action was taken against him, because at that time he was incompetent for the trial due to his mental condition. This mere ignorance of the authorities was proved extremely fatal when 3 years later, after shooting Richard, that is in the year 1983, he did another horrific crime. He was working in pizzeria where he threw a pizza pan at another employee, Kevin Hughes, and struck him in the head. Then he took out his gun and shot him in the left arm and in the right lung. Luckily, this time also the victim survived. In the year 1986, he was again arrested for assaulting a co-worker. According to him, the guards would put sedatives in his food. After this, he was sent to the Mental Diagnostic Center at Parkland Hospital in Dallas. Then from there, he was transferred to the Terrell State Hospital. And a year later in 1988, he was again admitted to the Rusk State Hospital, where he only stayed for about 34 days before being discharged. In a span of 2 years, he was admitted in 3 different hospitals, but nowhere he was treated completely. And the only thing that was protecting him from going to the jail was the reason that he was mentally unfit for any kind of punishment. But this was also not able to save him from his most brutal crime that he did in 1992 of murdering 2 people simultaneously, which I had mentioned in the beginning of this video. Now his crimes were getting out of hands and it was time to put an end to all this. But it was not easy as it seems to be. Authorities faced a lot of challenges. The most difficult one of them took years to solve, and this challenge was to prove the competency of Patterson. So in order to find that whether he was competent for the trial, on 3rd May 1993, a competency hearing was held of the jury. There, Patterson told that he was actually implanted devices in his body by the military, and those devices were controlling his actions. This means that his actions were not his own, but of the military who was controlling him at the time of his offense. Patterson was not actually lying, because this is exactly what he believed to be true out of his delusions. He even believed that his lawyer was involved with the other party and was making a plan against him. During several other hearings, Patterson continuously was speaking something or the other. Even the judge told him to stop disrupting, but he would not. He created so much nuisance that eventually the judge ordered to get Patterson removed from the courtroom. Approximately 2 months after this hearing, on 1st July 1993, the judge formally announced death sentence for Patterson. Although the judge had decided the punishment, but this could not be executed until Patterson is proved competent for it. Because the Texas law says that a mentally ill person could not be executed in mainly 2 cases. First is that if he is not aware of what he has done, and second is that if you don't know what his punishment is going to be. In another hearing held on 9 December 1997, he was asked that whether he knew what crimes he had done and what punishment he is going to get, at which Patterson replied that he had killed 2 people and he was sentenced death penalty for this. He also said that he don't want to die. These answers from Patterson showed that he was completely aware of his deeds and its consequences. After he was proved convicted of the crimes, a post-conviction evidentiary hearing was held from December 1997 to January 1998. In these hearings also, Patterson was very disruptive and was removed from the court several times. When the 1993 conviction hearing was held, Dr. James Gregson, a forensic psychiatrist, on the basis of his observations, told that there was a massive difference between Patterson's mental health in the year 1981 and 1993. It was a day and night difference. Both Dr. Gregson and Walter Quijano studied the records only from the Rusk State Hospital and not the other hospitals. They did not even talk to Patterson's family, due to which there might be some important clues left by them. So to fix this, Dr. Ellen Child was called in 1997 hearing. He had studied the records from the Rusk State Hospital, Terrell State Hospital, the local facilities, and family and friends of Patterson. After which, he came to a conclusion that Patterson was trying to fake mental health rather than mental illness. Walter believed that Patterson was mentally stable at the time of offense. Although he was delusional, but he was not insane. He also said that it is possible to fake delusions. And personally, I also agree to what Walter said, because delusions cannot develop criminal tendencies in someone. He was emotionless and very offensive at the time of his crimes, which might have no connection with his delusions. Later, Dr. Edward Grippen and Richard Rogers were hired to prove the competency of Patterson. Almost a year later, another hearing was held on 9th August 1999, where these mental health experts said that Patterson was not supporting them in their tests. He even refused to meet them, due to which it became very hard for them to prove his competency. So finally, on October 2000, the judge wrote that as the experts are not able to conduct proper tests on Patterson, so it became difficult to conclude about his competency. But at last, the federal judge found Patterson to be competent. On one side, there were several organizations and Patterson's lawyer Hart who were trying head to toe to protect Patterson from the death sentence, while on the other hand, there were the relatives of the victims who wanted strict actions to be taken against Patterson. Amidst all this, there was Michelle Smith, daughter of Mrs. Harris, who was shattered after the death of her mother, and she was waiting for the final execution of Patterson and was in favor of the decision taken by the judge. Now, two things were done. Firstly, Patterson was given the proper punishment order according to his crimes, that was, death sentence, and secondly, he was proved competent in the court for the punishment. But to make the situation worse, several organizations became active, like Texas Boards of Pardon and Paroles, US Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and organizations that prevent the execution of mentally unstable people. They all gathered in order to stop this execution. Even Patterson began writing them letters asking them to stop his execution. And this is one of the letters written by Patterson. In 1998, Court of Criminal Appeal had already rejected his request. Then again on January 2001, United States District Judge found him competent for execution. Similarly, the US Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals declined his appeal on May 2003. And finally, on the 10th of November 2003, the US Supreme Court dismissed his appeal. Slowly, the light of hope was disappearing for Patterson, leaving him in complete darkness. Finally, on 23rd December 2003, the final execution date was set to 18th May 2004. But something unexpected happened just a day before the execution on 17th May. The Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles issued an extremely rare recommendation of clemency for Patterson because of his mental illness, the vote of 5-1, and it was only the second such recommendation in the board's history. But the governor, Rick Perry, rejected this recommendation, saying that he could not put the life of citizens of Texas in threat anymore. He cannot take another chance, because no one can even imagine what Patterson is capable of doing if he was spared. So the execution was continued. Even at last time, Patterson refused to complete paperwork like choosing last meal and selecting witness. He was given a tray of sandwiches and cookies, from which he selected a candy bar and soft drink. When the warden asked Patterson his last statement, he said, "Statement to what? Statement to what?" He then rambled, "I am not guilty of the charge of capital murder. They are doing this to steal my money. My truth will always be my truth. No kin to you, undertaker, murderer, go to hell, get my money." Give me my rights." After 2 minutes, the warden signaled for the lethal injection to be started. Patterson was pronounced dead at 6:20 p.m.